Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Jayasekara from the Trinity Business School. Today, I have the pleasure and the privilege of inviting a close colleague of mine, Professor Gazi Uddin from the University of Linköping, to deliver a lecture in financial economics and uncertainty. Gazi has been a prominent name in econometric modeling, especially focusing on energy and renewable energy fields. He is also the recipient of the Wallanders Foundation for Research Excellence, where he won a few years ago, which is usually awarded for the best scholars in whole of Sweden. Without further ado, I'll hand over this virtual webinar to Professor Gazi to give us, which I'm sure, a very interesting talk in uncertainty and how we can deal with uncertainty, especially relevant in these chaotic times. Over to you, Gazi.
Thank you very much, Rana, for nice introduction, as well as thank you very much for the TRiSS giving me the opportunity as a visiting research scholar during this period of time. I hope in the future I can able to visit you and give the public talk as well. But still, I think as we are approaching or we are passing a very critical time, so it is be interesting to know based on our earlier experiences, the evidence of uncertainty which is connected to the economics and finance related issue. So today my presentation, in the first part of the presentation, I would like to discuss about the different measures of uncertainty that is already been detected, already been identified from the different perspective in economics and finance. And the second second potential thought, I will little bit discussed about the recent crisis like COVID-19. And third part, I will try to sharing based on my previous experiences, the complexity of the uncertainty when we can deal with in financial economics and the macro fundamentals areas. So the discussion is basically based on the three areas that the measures of uncertainties, and second one was the complexity of the economic modeling, and probably one case study that I will discuss on it based on the time availability. But it is available for you. The slide I will share with the TRiSS representative, so it could be distributed to the all if you need it. And otherwise, you are also welcome to send me the email if you need any further study materials regarding the lecture. So let's start with the discussion of the uncertainty. What so far we observed before the COVID-19. So far we observed the global economy are particularly facing the different sort of uncertainty, which could be named as geopolitical uncertainty based on the global risks and catastrophe. Ecological uncertainty is most frequently connected to the natural disaster. Modeling uncertainty, like how should we estimate or computed the proper inference based on the primary, macro, or firm level, or other sort of level data to identify the proper econometric modeling to generate the proper inference. The next important issue also the systemic and behavioral uncertainty regarding to the more institutionalist, which is more connected to the systematic risks, and behavioral is most likely related to the endogenous uncertainty. When we discussing these measures of uncertainty before the COVID-19, one of the most uncertain issues actually in the global economy and sustainability perspective, that is the carbon and climate risks. So we are actually our climate risks, the global academician, global policymaker, they're thinking about the climate risks is the highest, like most challenging risks that the global communities or the global economy are particularly facing. And the economics policymakers are constantly working on implementation of the proper policy instruments, try to introduce this to the policy instruments, including like green bonds, carbon financing. Also, it tried to introduce is to the increasing the share of the renewable energy among the energy mix. So yeah, and also for this outcome of this goal, we already been known that Paris Climate Agreement is one of the successful goal in this context. However, the complexity of these issues are very depends on the very country specific context. That country specific context means country are also interested to look about the economic dynamics for long term perspective and how the lag lead inertia in the economic and ecological system, like because and also how the global trade integration, international negotiation, and what type of policy design could be fitted for all, or the policy design for the developing countries and the policy design for the developed countries, or the resource availability for the developed country with respect to technology and innovation is not the same as it is in the developing countries or the climate affected country where there is a large numbers of people under the poverty line. So and as a result, the complexity of based on climate risks to measure uncertainty, it is very complicated and it is very complex. There is no straightforward answer in this context. And I think after the Second World War, after the Kyoto Protocol, this is the longest period of time that global community are struggling to build a common consensus regarding the climate risks. So I added a few stylized facts about the Paris Climate Agreement. One of the climate agreement is like in compared to the 1850, that world global temperature is increased 2 degrees, and now each country is based on the fundamentals of the Paris Climate Agreement. Each country is agreed that we try to reduce the temperatures at a certain level. Each country need to be published its own national contribution. This is the one of the most important part, because even though because the climate problem is such a problem, it doesn't matter 1 ton CO2 emission is produced in India or in Bangladesh, which is equivalent to 1 ton CO2 emission in produced in the USA, because we cannot bounded the global atmosphere in any way. So no matter where the climate is like changes or climate has more pollution is created, it actually hurt to the global level. So one of the important thing need to know that each of the countries contribution of the carbon emission, and based on that we can implement the proper policy. The second stylized fact of the Paris Climate Agreement is that global community decided to mobilize 100 billions of USD for the developed countries, and that are allocated for the developing countries to fight against the global climate, global warming, to promote the sustainable and fair economic development process. And then and the participants are already attended in 40,000 participants and delegates, observer civil society, and the agreement will enter the places in 2020. So these are the fundamental stylized fact of the Paris Climate Agreement. One thing besides that we are approaching, it is very important to mention it, that we are right now approaching a very serious economic or very say health related crisis such as COVID-19. So probably this COVID-19, every economy also more focused on to recovery, their economy, also their preference. But it is also important at the same time, we should not forget our climate risks at the same time, because this is the achievement, this is the goals, and this is the innovation. Also the global community made it for a long period of their discussion, suggestion, scientific communities, research, and etc. So we need to be also think about all of our priority also at the same times. Maybe the preference ordering will be changed, but we should not be overlooked that we should not consider the climate risks as an issue anymore. Even though the recent couple of 1 or 2 months, the global environment is become most favorable condition, the pollution is significantly reduced, and also we observe it in the atmosphere that environment is much more better than compared to the last long period of time. And also during this period of time, we already face it COVID-19 problem. Before COVID-19, we already also have an issue in related to Brexit. If you all of you probably remember, I would like to just mention a couple of crises: European debt ceiling crisis, European refugee crisis, US immigration plan, and also withdraw from the COP21. COP21 means the Paris Agreement, trade war between China and the US, and also in relation to the EU and Russia. So these are the already existing global geopolitical, I would like to say geopolitical or geo-economical turbulence is still going on within the system. Besides this, all problem also COVID may lead to the global economic recession based on the many international think tank prediction these issues. So if you can observe it, like now in after 2007 and 2008 global financial crisis, many of you thinking about why economists are failed to proper policy measure that could recover the economy very quickly. So or why the economy is policy is not functioning as efficient as compared to the previous time, that is take a longer period of time. That the problem is that right now that to controlling or to estimate the economic model, beside this lots of geopolitical uncertainty that creates the modeling part is become very complicated and complex. So it was actually not a straightforward answer that how should the economists or the other social scientists can build a proper policy. That policy is very efficient way to functioning, because the reason is there is a lots of complexity, or there is a lots of uncertainty, also geopolitical turbulence within the system. And besides this COVID-19, you probably, all of you probably aware that at the same time between the OPEC and the Russia, the conflict between the oil market, that also oil price also create the vulnerability. So probably this oil market also, as it is strongly connected with the economy as well as in the financial market from the perspective of asset classes. So this market also should need to be stable over the period of time in order to for the future betterment of the global economy or future feasibility of the global economy. So I would like to give you some idea, just probably many of you aware that some of the uncertainty are estimated or computed based on many scientific research communities. So how did they compute it and how they detected the previous event? So I will try to give you some of the stylized fact of this previous event. Like for example, previous there is the measures of economic uncertainties, there is a measures of financial uncertainty, political risks, geopolitical uncertainty, geopolitical turbulence in the crude oil. Also discussed about the cyber attack, also the policy related uncertainty. Let's start with the discussion of the economic policy answer. One of the most influential paper and a well cited paper in the field of economics based on uncertainty is based by Baker 2016, and Baker developed this and it was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics. And they are identific and their resource also available in the Stanford University's website. So that they developed this uncertainty measure like economic policy uncertainty based on the leading newspaper. So they actually looking for top 10 US newspaper based on the some common terms such as like economy, regulation or deficit, Federal Reserve, Congress, legislation, and U for uncertainty. And then the numbers of count, they counted to the article, and based on they normalize the 10 paper information and build the monthly indexes. And if we presented these are the data in the in your Excel based on their index, you can identify. I just plotted in from 1997 to 2016. You can probably observe it based on the US economic policy uncertainty. You can observe the Asian financial crisis also be detected, 9/11 terrorist attack, Gulf War II, and 2007 and 8 global financial crisis. Also Eurozone crisis, European migration crisis, also which is next lead to the Brexit, and also the US elections and etc. So these are the news-based event also sometimes detected the economic uncertainty. But again, these are the one of the strong critiques I would like to say of this sort of measure is it is strongly influenced by the English newspaper and global perspective, probably some others newspaper in UK, and but not likely it was covered in the as much as they can. So this is and it is still also it is media influence, but this is so far one widely used measures in economics and finance literature that that actually visualize the measures of uncertainty. So then next, if you go look at the only for based on the US in 1985 to 2050, the level of uncertainty is changed because the initial one we introduced to the global economic uncertainty. It means that it captured to the all the global event, and the next one. For this one, we included only for the US, which is reflected by Black Monday, Gulf War, Clinton election, Russian crisis, Bush election, 9/11, debt ceiling, Lehman Brothers collapse, fiscal cliff, and then Brexit. So these are the event all based on the news. It was detected as an economic policy uncertainty for US. So then I plotted to the European measures, like how the European crisis over the period of time. You probably observe it in 2060, the Brexit date of referendum also created the high level of uncertainty. Lehman Brothers also be detected, Nice treaty referendum. So these are the news-based uncertainty, even though it has some limitations because it is based on the news, but still it captured the measure of the global event. So if we look at the probably plotted the recent data, then probably we can also identify and detect the strength of the COVID, also this COVID impact of the global economy, and as well as different country level uncertainty measures. And also in order to better understanding another limitation is these are the index is not developed for every single countries in the world. It is mostly influenced by the developed countries, but besides the developed countries, some of the other countries data is also available. Just for your aid, I just like to mention the country name: the USA, Australia, Brazil, Chile, China, Europe, France, Germany, India, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Korea, Netherlands, Russia, Spain, Sweden, and United Kingdom. So these are the database is available for anyone. You can use for economicpolicyuncertainty.com. So you can have the all resources. So these are not the best, but this is, I would like to say, these give you the better understanding of the style effect of the previous crisis. So if you are very sensitive with the modeling issues, you need to be also careful that whether the information you are interested to looking for, does it capture these measures of uncertainties in your investigated model or not. So then I look about some of the recent information. Probably you can look about the next one, the economic policy uncertainty versus the Brexit. So all and the Brexit so you probably recognized it that all economic policy uncertainty is increasing more, and also compared to the Brexit issues. Brexit means when the Brexit referendum. So how it increases the uncertainty. So sometimes the issue is very important. Based on this news, because we are observing in terms of financial market, the news is very, very sensitive. So when the news can increase the market sentiment or panic, that also be strongly connected to the financial market. And we know that financial market has also has a strong antibiotic power to influence to the real economy. So these are one transmission mechanism how the news shock can influencing to the global economy and global market, because right now we are in a global economy, we are right now in a digital platform. So all the information is most likely not free, but it is almost available. So in people can easily make their decision based on the news. And then if we then there is a one complicated issues in this context, like because that when we look about the uncertainty in a general perspective, there is a two front of uncertainty. The one front is in economic uncertainty, another front is financial uncertainty, and probably some of the uncertainties are coincide to each other or same, but the magnitude or the strength of the impact between financial, if the event is based on financial fact, may be more stronger than to the economic or social fact. So I just plotted, if you look at this left side of the, in my outlook, left side of the vertical axis is represent to the blue line, is represent to the US economic policy uncertainty, and the right side of the red line is representing to the VIX, and VIX is basically based on computed to the implied volatility of the S&P options issues. So if we plotted, these are the two information set, like US economic policy uncertainty versus the US VIX, you can observe it that they have some sort of pattern, but not necessarily both are the same. So the strength, like for example, if you are more interested in looking for global financial crisis, in that case, probably you are interested to see the 2007 and 8 impact in overall economic perspective is not that level of trigger high. But if you look at the from the perspective of VIX, the Lehman Brothers crops has a very strong response. So these are interesting things to look about the market sentiment from the perspective you are investigating on it. So, and also you need to be careful. Then probably one question should be natural to raise, that whether we included both. If you included both, that also created the complexity, because there is a lots of mutually exclusive event. That event can create the complexity of your modeling and also complexity of your proper parameter computation. So then I included some crisis, that is for the European migration crisis and also the US migration fear uncertainty, and probably you can get an idea. This is for the US migration, like US migration EPO versus your migration fear. So some US migration EPO means economic policy, and migration fear means people are feeling more panic because of this migration. So these are the two things are not the same. So sometimes fear can also influencing to the society about the more like against to the migration. So fear is not likely always that government or the particular country takes some policy action. So like for example, if you look at the recent European migration, it creates the more fear rather than in policy. It is nothing has been done, but in terms of fear, it creates the more fear indexes increases high. And same is concept for the European in UK. In UK also, it is European refugee crisis time. The fear is increasing than to the migration EPO. But if you look at this one for France, it is more EPO is increasing to the fear. If you look at Germany, it is almost close to the both are a little bit the similar stacks. So then we included to the before the crisis, very recent. We can also observe it that US and China, the trade conflict also created the uncertainty in the global trade dynamics, and that also like tariff hike, and it creates also the uncertainty. Then I would like to discuss about a little bit also the measures of geopolitical risks. Like geopolitical risks, the risks is which is associated with the war, political tension, terrorist act that affect to the normal and peaceful course of international relation, and which is also based on the 11 international newspapers and the article mentoring which are related to the more geopolitical tension. And their index is also based on also JPR is often constructed in a judgmental way and with a little variation and short sample availability. And also there is other types of measures, some geopolitical, but it is more like from the perspective of finance, like the implied volatility of the gold indexes, which is provided by CBOE, implied volatility of VIX, currency VIX, and OVX, which is represented to the 100 exchange traded fund for the ETF market. In the crude oil energy based 100 exchange traded fund. And these are the newspaper they are using, such as in the United States, the Boston Globe, Chicago Turbine, Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. And the UK, they use for the Daily Telegraph, Financial Times, Guardian, the Times, and in Canada, I think the Globe and Mail. But they also included a very historical indexes for geopolitical measure based on New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times, and which is back from 1900. One of the interesting thing, probably, if you can observe it, these are the indexes, but these are the indexes is most strongly influenced by the Anglo-Saxon press, and so this is one of the probably the limitation. However, the most interesting thing is that whether these index are actually captured to the previous event of geopolitical uncertainty based on war, terrorist attack, and other sort of economic turbulence. So if you look at this information set in geopolitical uncertainty, if you can observe it, that it is 1985 to present, I just plotted it. US bomb in Libya, Kuwait invention, which is starting in 1990s, Gulf War, 1991, 9/11 terrorist attack, Iraq invention, Madrid bombing, London's, and transatlantic aircraft plot, Russia annexes Crimea, Paris attack, Ukraine ISS. So you can clearly observe it. These are the event has clearly been identified as a measure of geopolitical risks. That risk is associated with the war, terrorist attack, and other sort of geopolitical war. The next one, another important things like literature also been discussed, that the uncertainty not necessarily is based on the war. There is other sort of uncertainty also strongly connected with the economy, which is most likely represent to the volatility in the crude oil market, because many of the countries in the emerging countries, or many of the growing economics or export oriented countries or manufacturing countries, are strongly dependent on the oil imports. For example, including in China, India is a very oil importing country. So the variability of the oil price has a significant impact on the real economy. For example, in here we plotted to the geopolitical uncertainty. You can clearly observe that how the price, the Arab oil price, Iranian revolution, Iraq-Iran war, then Saudi Arabia, also the Gulf War, Asian financial crisis, 9/11 terrorist attack, then also the oil price rise by the OPEC cutback, and also this is for the again OPEC cutbacks in 2011, global financial collapse, and also the uprising Egypt and Libya war, and excess supply. Also, you can observe it, the Syrian conflict. If you plotted the recent data, you can clearly observe it now. From this month of March, the oil price is also decreases such a level, is going to the history like 19.20. It is one of the lowest, I think, based on my computation last 20 years of global oil market price. So that give the indication that oil price volatility or the high level of variability of the oil price, it is very strongly influencing to the global economy, because as the energy is primary input in the production process, so when the producer are producing their final output ABC, that also has a cost from the perspective of energy. So if the energy market is become variability, consumer lost their flexibility based on the price availability. So this is a very important component at the moment for stability of the global energy market, because after the COVID-19 crisis, we need at least the resource wise, the primary input should be supposed to be stable, and the price mechanism should be stable, and economy can use the resources in more efficient way. So if there is a scarcity of the resources based on the demand and supply, can fail to explaining the market equilibrium condition for the oil price as well as the optimum quantity, and in that case the global economy will be facing more economic turbulence, because we don't have the much availability for the production side of alternative energy sourcing. Still, we are increasing the renewable energy, but the renewable energy is not yet that level of production yet that can as a close substitute for alternate as a crude oil. but it is increasing in a very standard way, particularly in the developed country, not as it is in the same concept for developing countries. So let's start with that little bit discussed about now to the COVID-19. So there is a many perspective of the COVID-19 that one perspective of the COVID-19 is it is a very complex and complicated would be for economic modeling. Like, for example, many countries, because it is a history based on the history that this is the first time the economic activities are locked down. So as the economic activity are locked down, economic supply chain is locked down, different country has a different effect, level of effect is not generalized, and there is no way to recovery for this COVID-19. Only the standard measures is based on the standard procedure of the each of these countries: lockdown, stay at home, stay safe. So these are the process create one important how long. So one important is how long the economy, it will take time economy should recovery back. The important this is one of the interesting question from the general perspective. Every citizen interested to know how long after this crisis will we keep going. We don't have the answer in a proper scientific answer. The second question, then after the crisis will be over or we close to the over, then everyone has a common question: how long it will take time economy could be back it is normal condition. The complexity is that how should we quantify of this modeling, because now we are in a globalized world. Every country has depend on another country either in the primary or secondary or any different form of resource sharing. No countries in the world, based on my tiny experiences, that self-competent. This country has self-competent from primary input to the final input in all sectors. So every country has some dependency to the another country, and in that case the resource sharing is the most important thing. So and then also second important thing, difficult to predict the macro fundamentals, because there is a lots of sectors, and economy is not only based on the GDP. Economy is not only based on the one sector. Economy has a small and business sector. Economy has a lots of people are unemployed, lots of people are pay for the defaulter, lots of their business activities shut down in the domestic level, in the international level. For example, if we thinking about the airline industry is totally most affected, but just after the crisis is over, the most important sector would be the airline industry. It is based on my understanding. Then you asking, because we need a quick transform the most important goods and services. We need the transport for ship, we need the transport for other sort of vehicles. So transport sector, the speed of the transport sector, the growth of the transport sector make it comfortability for the global people survival. So this is and as a result, so how the global community or how the global countries are response all these factors, that's actually connected to the macro modeling. So based on my experience, I don't think so. Each and every country build their own predictability measure that yes, we'll be recovery our economy in 2 years. And so I think it's very difficult to say. I would like to say that it is depends on how the global community build their global stimulus package. So that's why I said it is very difficult and complicated to build the econometric modeling or based on the numbers of patient, based on the numbers of patient is affected, even though these data probably is many countries are already said many countries didn't have the enough resources for this data, many countries to test, many countries didn't have the enough spaces. Like if you think about the developing countries, if you think about the migration affected countries, if you think about the Africa, we don't know how many people are. So these data for numbers of people are affected, numbers of people are died. Many people could be died in the developing countries without any taste, without any medicine, without knowing what are the reason they are dying. So based on these data, many people are probably already been affected, but many of the developed countries didn't also have the resources, the number of tests, so all sum together it is very complicated that these are the only measure that later on the economist or the financial economist consider in their modeling to generate the proper inference. So in my personal opinion, I'm very critical also this database that when the economist and financial economists, also including me, if I can use it, this information, it should be need to be very carefully to handle these issues, because otherwise this information set could be providing the misleading parameter when we generated some of the macro predictability or macro fundamentals model, etc. And then also said the another challenges for scarcity of resource and supplies and interaction. So, and then what would be the policy? I don't have the policy, but one thing that's my understanding of the experiences based on my PhD. When I write the first paper, I can observe it that if a country, based on the European business cycle, if the countries are become more synchronized to each other and try to build a common comprehensive policy, they can solve to the crisis in more quicker than if the country can take the independent policy. So if I can understand in this context, based on the earlier experiences, I would like to say the global community, either it could be the region wise, either it could be the global wise, the global community can build the policy issues at the global level or European level. So that could be more easier way to solve this crisis. I don't like to say it will be as a magic, but I would like to say it could be more easier to solve, and the policy instruments could be more effective, because this is one of the another challenges that that what type of policy instrument could be more effective, because we don't have these previous experiences. We compare it to the some of we are comparing, these are the crises is related bit to the more stronger than global financial crisis, but I would like to say it would be more, because during the global financial crisis period of time, the economic activity is not locked down, the transport global supply chain is not locked down, so you need to thinking about the shock could be more stronger. But if the global transmission mechanism or global resource sharing supply chain process will be functioning all together, I think this process also be possibly to recovery quick, because as before the crisis, we don't have significantly strong economic crisis either. So global economies went well. So I think there is a high possibility that global economy recover it very quickly, in addition with the stimulus or comprehensive fiscal and monetary packages of respective country. So these are my first part of the discussion of my presentation. So, and second part, I also discussed a little bit complex. Second part, actually, I added one model that how the uncertainty are connected to the three different sectors, like one for oil market, another for energy, natural gas market, and third one for in clean energy indexes. So we are interested to see what type of uncertainty are actually triggered to the energy market and how the value at risk is changes, and also looking about the downside risks versus upside risks. And that could be for all of you as an just a small exercise to better understanding how the uncertainty is connected with the oil market. I would like to stop now in now and like to open for the questions. And if you have any questions, you are most welcome.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah,
Hi.
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, Terry Morrissey here. Hi. This is very interesting. I'm actually a psychologist, and so I'm just looking at behavior at the minute. But can I just take you back to the very beginning, towards the very beginning of your talk, where you said that this existing COVID crisis was overtaking everything else, and do you think that the climate change, which seems such an amazingly a risky thing only a few months ago, will we ever get back to seeing these issues as being important? when this COVID crisis is dominating everything at the minute?
It's a very, very good question, and this question is also strongly in my mind as well, because I'm totally in the favor of this. Climate risks is one of the biggest risks, and now the global community is probably so much stress on this COVID-19, and then it could be getting the less preference ordering to the climate risks. But I would like to say we still keep on the track, because these are the success of these climate risks agenda. The agreement is more than 50 years of negotiation, the meetings and the resource sharing. But if now this process will be interrupted because of COVID-19, and I think that will be a huge cost in the long run for society.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
But what's about your opinion? Do you have any opinion that what should we can think about from the psychological perspective? Because psychologically, we probably right now more focused on these COVID issues. But when these issues will be disappear, like, or it will be solved, then what should we focus on it as a how should we give the more attention as well as in the climate risk issues in the society?
Well, it's interesting because I'm on an international group at the moment, which was set up actually following a summit in Lisbon back in November, and which was on the global response to climate change, and it was an association of all the world's psychological associations, and very quickly it mutated into the COVID crisis. And so we had our first meeting all online, of course, and then our second meeting, we started talking about COVID. So climate has actually taken a back seat. And I'm just worried that it will continue to take a back seat. And whether it's like the whole world has stopped. And nothing else matters except this. Now, it's extremely important, obviously, and it's a pandemic. But life still goes on, and I think that, we have to make sure that we don't forget, we probably will never go back to the way we were, but I think we have to make sure that we don't forget that there were real issues before this happened.
Yes, I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
Anyone has any more questions?
If there aren't any more questions, we could draw the webinar to an end.
Great. This is Ronan here, the TRiSS director. Thanks so much, everyone, for turning up today. I know these are unusual circumstances, and a particular thanks, obviously, to Gazi for his very interesting talk.
No, thank you very much, Ronan, for giving me the opportunity to talk. Hope after the crisis, I will be back and give the real talk in the seminar.
Yes, it'd be a pleasure to have you physically at TRiSS as soon as we can arrange that. Thanks so much for turning up as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.